So this is not going to be a normal video on my channel. I'm going to be completely honest. This is not the type of video that I enjoy doing, nor is it something that I want to be a prevalent thing on my channel. But recently, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding a YouTuber called SethTheProgrammer. I avoid YouTube drama, but in this case, I don't feel very comfortable walking away because as someone who's followed Seth and is very much familiar with a lot of this drama, I've been seeing a lot of people who clearly don't know a lot about the debate community sharing their own take in the situation without knowing the full context of some of these situations. Now, I'm just going to be upfront about something. I'm not here to respond to Clyde's video. Frankly speaking, I don't care for the whole character assassination exposed videos type of bullshit. I'm not Seth's PR manager and I'm not interested in trying to discredit the idea that he's a cunt, especially because, no offense, but he is a cunt. However, what I am responding to are the more serious allegations pertaining to the pedophilia accusations because this is something that I've been meaning to talk about for a while. If there's one thing I've learned in my time on the internet is that there's a lot of mishandling when it comes to these serious topics. We've seen time and time again people getting wrongfully accused of grooming, rape, assault, pedophilia. We've also seen cases where people who actually were guilty of all those things getting scot-free and never receiving any legal actions. And that's because we all have this tendency of jumping on bandwagons and recklessly muddying the conversations. And it's really sad that this continues to happen year after year because these kinds of things can ruin people's lives. So it's really sad to see how the internet as a whole hasn't matured in this department, and I say this because a very similar situation is likely happening right now. Now, full disclosure, this video is in no way meant to 100% prove that Seth is not guilty of any of the allegations. I don't have the full picture on the situation. I've never talked to Seth or their alleged victims. In fact, if I were to tell you to blindly believe that Seth is innocent, that would be counterintuitive to my main point. What I'm actually trying to achieve with this video is make people understand that when we see stories like these, instead of jumping on hate mobs and already deciding who you think is the villain, you should wait until more information is out and look into the already available information before you can decide who is guilty and innocent. And even after that, you should still assume that there's probably more to the situation that we're just simply not aware of. Now, allow me to talk about my reaction to these allegations because the thing is, all of the pieces of information that I've seen, especially the ones in the Google Doc containing the incriminating screenshots, everything I've seen so far are all things that I've been privy to in the past. This is not the first time I've been exposed to these allegations, and there's a reason for why I never took much from it in the first place. Now, SethTheProgrammer is someone who, for as long as I've known him, due to the controversial nature and the communities he's a part of, he's always been someone who's been targeted by multiple actors, and because I'm already familiar with some of the people that are currently targeting him, I looked into this whole situation with a lot of skepticism. You see, during the live stream on Keemstar's channels, there were at least 3 people that actually warned Keem to be careful about the kinds of people that are out there proving his guilt because they're all people with their own skeletons in their closets. Now, every time they tried warning Keem, they were very quickly dismissed, and I kind of understand why. I get the whole point that just because the person accusing the other one of being an asshole is also an asshole, it doesn't necessarily invalidate his claim. And that is true, I agree with that. However, I do think that when the person in question has motivation to target and ruin Seth's career, even if it means manipulating evidence, it is definitely fair to warn people about this. However, at the same time, the opposite is true. I think it's just as fair to listen to them if they have an accusation to throw at someone, especially if it's a serious allegation. I think that regardless of how shady someone might be, it's not enough to discredit every single thing that they say. So I read the Google Doc and primarily focused on the pedophilia allegations. There's other stuff in the doc that I honestly don't care about. Again, don't care for the whole character assassination bullshit. If you want to call out Seth for all that stuff, that's fine. I honestly don't care. I just care about the stuff that's actually criminal. So the first screenshot shared was one where a user called Catherine Kawaii was asked by Seth how old he was, and he responded by saying 16. So far, there's really nothing to deduce from this because the screenshot is cut and we literally have no idea what was written after this. We do, however, know what was messaged 3 months later, in which we see a few exchanges between Seth and Catherine that are somewhat overtly sexual. Now, while the screenshot does look bad, there are 2 problems. For one, Seth isn't actually making any advances. It's actually mostly Catherine, the one that's doing it, talking about an absurd hypothetical scenario, and based on the tone of the conversation, this doesn't even seem like a serious one, and as someone who's followed Seth the Programmer for years, this does line up with the type of sense of humor he used to have. Now, is it inappropriate to have this type of conversation with a minor, even if it is a joke? Yes, it is. But is it enough to call him a pedophile? I would say it's enough to call him incredibly reckless, but I wouldn't jump to pedophilia, especially because there's some additional piece of context regarding these screenshots that were not included in the doc. So what I'm showing to you right now are screenshots that took place when Alvisam, who is Catherine Kawaii by the way, first shared the screenshots of the conversations he had with Seth. Then there's this image where he clarifies that the majority of the conversations he had with Seth weren't in any way predatory, and even for the screen caps that he did share, he showed some amount of hesitance of even defining it as actual pedophilia. Then there's this screen cap where he 100% confirms that by the time the exchanges in the second screenshots took place, Seth already knew that he was a guy. They apparently even chatted on VC. Now, there are two ways that you can interpret this. Either you want to believe that Seth is bisexual or pansexual and that he would feel attraction towards a male, giving even more reason to believe that this was an act of grooming. But the other way you could view this is that he's not attracted to guys, and if that's the case, then it does make it even more unconvincing that this was actually meant to be a serious conversation. Now, I don't know Seth's sexuality, so I can't definitively point one way or the other. The only thing I do know is that 2 years ago, Clyde said this.
So I don't know how that
you ain't even
like
real quick, like you ain't even gay. Like how does that even line up? Like let's be realistic for the start of that. Like that's the first part of it being a fucking clear joke. Like a lot of the shit that was in that old ass first server that you ran, and this is not even to just defend you as a friend, like, bro, that server was fucked up. Like, it was way worse than some of the stuff that exists now. And there was a lot of, like, pretty fucked up humor, like, regardless of the fact of, like, what was said. It was, half the shit there was definitely not serious at all whatsoever. I'd go in there, I'd see you with funny-ass profile pictures, you having jokes with, like, Westong and stuff in main chat, like, suck my dick pussy, what's up, bitch? Like, just out of nowhere, like, but you're not even gay. Like,
like it was me and Clyde and many other people, we just have that sense of humor. So
you should
like
see our DMs. Holy fuck.
So like, okay.
Does that prove that Seth isn't into men? It's kind of hard to say. The only thing I do feel comfortable saying is that regardless of which sexuality he has, I would still largely remain unconvinced that these screenshots really mean that much. I think the worst that you can say is that they're inappropriate interactions to have with minors, which I do agree, by the way. But as far as this proving that Seth was trying to groom him, I would consider this pretty weak evidence, especially when the alleged victim didn't even seem that convinced. Now that we're done with this, I want to get to the more serious case, and that is the one with Satire, because I feel like out of all the cases, this is the most incriminating one. Now, I want to get into the first few screenshots that, as you can read in the Google Doc, it states that in these conversations, Seth was asking for nude photographs of her. Now, here's the first thing about this that's a little bit suspicious. For one, the order of the screenshots are actually meant to imply that the messages in the first screenshot took place before the ones in the second screenshot. But if you actually look at the position of the scroll in the second screenshot, it's actually higher than in the first one, and given how these two screenshots had to have been snapped around the same time, given the strong resemblance of the image quality and the contents outside of the messages, and also given how by this point Seth and Satire hadn't spoken to each other in a long time, as it was confirmed by Satire herself, and also the fact that these two accounts are obsolete, there's no way there could have been new messages since then, meaning that the messages in the second screenshot were sent before the ones in the first one. Now if you look at the second screenshot, this is when we start having a different problem. Now once again, as you can read in the Google Doc, it is written here that the conversation that these two are having are in reference to Seth asking her for nude photos. But the thing is, this description is very doubtful. When I read these messages, I'm pretty sure what they were actually talking about was a completely different event that was going on at the time, in which Seth was being invited by someone called Mommy to have a threesome with her boyfriend.
It'd just be between us. It wouldn't be to get higher up or anything. I'm pretty sure this is in reference to a girl called Mommy. And actually in the next screenshot, I think I'm talking about her. I say she has a boyfriend that wants her to. She thinks it's hot. Haha. This is in reference to mommy. Okay? For those of you who don't know who mommy is, she's an incredibly fucking hot girl. And I don't say that often since I'm borderline asexual. She's a really hot ass girl who came into my server. You guys might remember. I don't even know if I should post the picture. And she was making very interesting band signs in my NSFW chat of me. And she was saying her boyfriend came to the server and was like, do you want to fuck her? I was like, what? And he said, how about we have a three-way in Texas? So from what I'm reading, that's what that's about.
In fact, if you read some of the messages, Seth says she has a boyfriend and she thinks it's hot. Now the thing is, she is a third person pronoun, meaning that for him to use that specific term, he had to have been referring to someone else and not Satire, whom he was talking to in that DM conversation. So Satire couldn't have been the topic of the sentence when he wrote those messages. That's how basic grammar works. Now I'm sure you're wondering, why am I so sure that this conversation was in reference to someone else? I mean, to be fair, Seth could easily just be lying about this in order to cover his ass, and that's a pretty fair argument to make. In fact, I like that skepticism. That's how we should think. But here's the thing though, Seth wasn't lying. And you want to know why I'm so certain about this? Because Satire, the alleged victim, also confirmed that this was a conversation that they were having at the time.
The discussion became when I remember this exact discussion, actually. He was sitting in court and he was talking about like having a threesome with someone in his Discord. The guy was a moderator and his girlfriend was open to having a threesome. He said that he was going to fly them out and they were going to have a threesome, blah, 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 whatever. I couldn't give a shit. But yeah, that's where that conversation started.
Now, if that's the case, then I have to kindly ask, why was this information omitted from the doc? This is a very important piece of info because it brings context to what they were talking about, but they left it out. They also left out the messages that came before Satire was proclaiming that she had no interest in sending nude pictures to anyone. And my question to that is, if Seth was asking for nudes during those DMs, where are the messages where he outright asked for them? Why are we only seeing the messages starting from when she supposedly denies the request? Now, does this prove that Seth is innocent? Not necessarily. I don't think that the case is closed, and I'm still open to hearing what the accusers have to offer. But if I were to look at these messages, now knowing the real verifiable context of what these two were talking about, confirmed by both parties involved, then suddenly there's a whole other way that you can interpret this conversation that isn't nearly as incriminating. When Satire says, I don't want to be rude to anyone that sends nude to you, but I have more respect for myself than that. By anyone that sends nudes to you, she could have likely been referring to this mommy girl from the threesome story, and everything else she mentions in this sentence was just simply her sharing her perspective on why she wouldn't do it in a hypothetical scenario. The one message in the screenshot that I do believe is the most convincing that Seth was probably asking for nudes is the one where he says, I wouldn't think any less of you if you did. And I will say, that does seem pretty creepy. But once again, given the topic of the conversation and the fact that he was replying when she said, that's so weird, in reference to mommy thinking that engaging in sexual interactions with Seth would be hot, then one way you can interpret this isn't so much that Seth was asking for nudes, but more so him saying that he wouldn't think less of her if she were in that same scenario. Now granted, I do sympathize with Satire if she got out of the conversation thinking that that was a creepy advance, and at the end of the day, I don't have the complete conversation, so I'm not sure if maybe there may be some like other messages that substantiate her claim, but purely based on what we can infer so far, this doesn't seem like a request for her to send news, especially because later on, it's a bit difficult to see because it's blocked out, but you can actually see that Seth wrote, you're too pretty to be sending nudes anyways, which does further give off the impression that this wasn't something that he was expecting from Satire in a realistic scenario. Now, as for the other screenshot, I think I know why they decided to show off this first and not the other one. You see, let's say Seth actually did ask for nude pictures. I think this screenshot would be the most telling of that. When looking at it from that angle, this is by far the most incriminating one and the hardest to weasel yourself out of it, and I'm definitely interested in hearing how Seth would defend this. But here's my problem with the screenshot. By itself, this is completely indecipherable. You see, this screenshot has the exact same problem that the first one has, which is the fact that it starts off with Satire supposedly denying the request to send nude pictures of her, but it doesn't include the message where Seth actually asked for it. I don't know why they're omitting this. Is there any specific reason for why they couldn't show the full conversation? These screenshots were taken around the same time. It's a Google Doc, so there shouldn't be any limitations for what you can show. This isn't a YouTube video where you have to sometimes be concise about what you choose to include. It's a document that is meant to detail all of the scandals that Seth has been involved in, but for some reason they didn't include the messages where Seth is asking for nudes during these DMs. Is there any specific reason for why? Because if they don't show it, then I'm always going to refer back to the earlier conversation that they were having, where it's easy to argue that they were only talking about mommy and her boyfriend, and now you know where the problem lies. Because if I do that, then it's the exact same story here. But that's not the only problem I have with this screenshot. Now, if you look at Seth's messages, specifically after he said, haha, got you, they don't make any sense. At some point he said, are you a virgin or something? Just curious. Then he says, okay, I gotcha. Does this make any sense to you? Now, in case you're not sure as to what I'm alluding to, let me explain to you something about Discord. Now, if we take a messaging app like WhatsApp, which by the way, fuck you guys for making me use WhatsApp. If I delete a message, it will actually say that a message was deleted, meaning that everyone would know from just reading the chat history alone that either me or someone else went out of the way to delete messages. However, on Discord, it's different. If I delete a message, it will not give any indication that a message was deleted at first glance. In fact, as you can see here, these two users are messaging to each other back to back, and yet if user 1 starts deleting messages, then suddenly it looks like user 2 is sending consecutive messages, so unless you are there and can recognize that some messages are missing, there would be no way for any outsider just simply observing the messages through screenshots to be able to recognize if the messages are fragmented. The reason why I'm mentioning this, and other people have observed this as well by the way, I'm not even the first person to have noticed this. When you look at the screen caps, there's a very real possibility that Satire deleted messages. When I read Seth saying, okay, I gotcha, sounds to me like he was responding to something Satire said. Otherwise, this doesn't make any sense. Now, if Satire did delete messages, which to be fair, we don't know. I can't 100% prove that, but if she did, then this muddies the evidence even further because we already know that there was a piece of context that was omitted from the doc. But now there's apparently even more context that was deliberately scrapped from the DMs, and if that's the case, then guess what? I have no choice but to extrapolate on these messages solely based on what I do know, which is the fact that Seth and Satire were talking about mommy and her boyfriend, and given how Satire was claiming that she wouldn't send her body to anyone that isn't her boyfriend in reference to mommy because that's the only way I can verifiably interpret this unless there's more information that is revealed, then when Seth asked if she was a virgin, he was likely asking this because he got the impression that Satire was prudish based on her comment of not sending her body to anyone other than her boyfriend. So he asked if she was a virgin out of curiosity because typically you would expect sexually inexperienced people to be prudish given how they haven't opened up to anyone. Is this an appropriate question to ask anyone? No, it is not, by no means. But if this is meant to definitively prove that Seth is a pedophile or that he was trying to groom her or get her nudes, this doesn't prove anything. One minor update to this, so apparently they updated the Google Doc and decided to mention the fact that Satire was sexually assaulted in the past, And I'm not sure if they're trying to use this as a justification for why she might have deleted messages or why they omitted this in the Google Doc. I'm not entirely sure. But I mean, if that's the case, then, well, I guess there is confirmation that they did in fact delete messages. But to be fair, that might not be what they were referring to. Maybe they were just pointing out the fact that she at one point told Seth this in the past and we're trying to, show that Seth's an asshole for asking if she's a virgin or not or something like that. I don't know. I mean, the point is, if there are deleted messages, then I definitely feel even more skeptical about taking this at face value because there's clearly context that's missing here. But I don't know. And if you want to argue that that's not the reason why he made that comment, then my only response to that is show me the full conversation, please. I don't want screenshots that start at a certain point that could easily be taken out of context and when there's a possibility that messages are being deleted. If this is all it takes for everyone to agree that someone's a pedophile, then we are fucking doomed as a society because clearly we don't have any critical thinking to actually analyze serious accusations, especially when this can result in people's lives being ruined. And we've seen this time and time again. The most popular story of last year was of a famous celebrity suing his ex-partner for defamation. How the fuck can this be the most talked about event of last year and yet no one fucking bothers to learn what was probably the biggest lesson to learn from that story, which is that people's lives can be ruined when someone runs a successful slander campaign. You would think that after that story, more people would be skeptical towards these types of accusations and question certain things, but clearly no one learned. The next screenshot that they share is meant to prove that he was suggesting flying out to her or vice versa. However, this screenshot has the exact same problem that the other two have, which is the fact that there's not enough context. I don't understand why they won't show all of the messages. Like, most phones have at least 16:9 screens. It's hard to believe that it's an issue with screen space, and you can just post multiple screenshots in the same doc. The fact that they're not including previous messages that give more context is honestly probably the most frustrating thing about these screenshots because I want to dissect the evidence, but they're not giving enough information. They will spend multiple pages trying to prove that a deleted user is Seth or narrowing down his age or whatever, but they don't bother including additional messages that give more context to these screenshots. Why not show what was written before? This is essentially expecting me to give the least charitable interpretation of the screenshot, and yeah, sure, if I were to look at it that way, it does seem like Seth is insinuating flying to see Satire, but I don't know the full context of this conversation, so I don't know what to make of it. I've seen some people making comparisons with EDP, but you know what's the one thing about the EDP story that makes it distinct from this? They actually showed the full chat. They even showed shit pics. We don't fucking need to see that, but they showed it anyway. But that's not even the only thing about this screenshot that I would like to comment on. You see, a long time ago, one of the people that was the most adamant about the fact that Seth was guilty and was railing on him for a very long time was someone called Trini. Now, I don't know what are Trini's current stance is on the whole situation, but 2 years ago, he was having a conversation with Seth in which he claimed that one of the reasons for why he eventually dropped the case against Seth was because the main group of people targeting him were being deceitful.
And I'm just like, look, bro, just a heads up, Abraham and Satire lied about this shit. They told me, oh, Seth promised to fly out and promised that he would come to a specific hotel because he knew the hotel in her area and knew her fucking Australian zip code or whatever the fuck.
Right.
And that like all sorts of like crazy detailed information. And that they had all of the evidence for it. And I took their word for it because it seemed really legitimate at the time. And so I'm like, yeah, like, okay, sure. Then when you and I argued, you were like, and I thought this was a legitimate point, you were like, well, if it is the case that I'm just seriously like a child grooming pedophile and there's just so much evidence for me just like asking Satire when I could fly out there, like, why don't you guys just expose me? And I was like, yeah, that is a good point because Abraham and Satire have been talking about it for a while, so why don't we just do it? So I asked them, and by the way, it wasn't just me who heard them say this. They talked about it with me and Mikey, right? Yeah. So just keep that in mind for a second. So I hit them up about it, and I'm like, Abraham, yo, can you get me that evidence? And then he tells me, we never said that. And I'm like, dude, are you being fucking serious right now? And he's like, yeah, we never said that. And so I asked him, Mikey, and I'm like, yo, did he not say that? And he was like, not only did they say that, but they promised they had evidence. And so I was like, yeah, there's fucking liars. And I told them up front, I thought they were fucking liars. Then they proceeded to try and call me a pedophile and shit on Twitter because I talk to Jade occasionally, which I thought was really ironic because I don't know if you know this, but Satire used to have really private conversations with Jade, like really deeply, emotionally intimate conversations with this like 11-year-old for no fucking reason.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, that's actually fucking weird. She was ranting about her mom and shit to like this kid. Really bizarre.
He's like prepubescent.
But dude, this is someone who's still doing like pre-algebra homework. Like you're sitting here ranting to her about your mom dying. Like that's just like why him and that's just bizarre to me. But yeah, they try to call me a pedophile and shit because you talked to. So I'm just like, look, I get the impression that they just like to lie and have weird vendettas against people and shit. I'm not the first person they've done this to. You definitely aren't the first person they've done this to. That's just how they've always been. It's been like that since like Aradaro became the leader of their group. So I have just no higher standard for them than just to like lie and be vindictive.
Now, whether or not you want to believe that Trini is being dishonest with his interpretation of the story, or if this might have been a case of miscommunication, that's up to you to decide. But I do think it's very interesting that the main person that practically started the whole wave of accusation towards Seth reached the conclusion that the same group of people responsible for this Google Doc were deceitful. Also, there's one minor inconsistency I would like to point out in the Google Doc, because here it's written, in fact, this hotel story is exactly the same claim Seth makes during his conversation with Tryharder. It seems odd that both Trini and Seth mention this exact same supposed inconsistency within a day of each other, and neither provides any citation for where or when she supposedly claimed this. So basically they're trying to say that they never claimed that Seth was trying to fly her out to a hotel or something like that. And I believe Satire also denied ever claiming this at one point in the past.
Oh, an inconsistency.
Apart from like Trini just saying it, which we've proven what Trini said. Trini's kind of exaggerated. I would like to see where I said that Seth was going to fly me out and fuck me. I've never said that.
And yet, during the stream with Keemstar, she said that's exactly what Seth tried to do.
To make sexual comments. He also insinuated in call that he wanted to fly me over to join one of his mods and that mod's girlfriend for a threesome.
So, I don't know, there seems to be some inconsistencies with the story. I mean, if they can clarify exactly what they mean by all of this, by all means, please do, but I don't know, seems really weird. Another thing I'd like to point out, I mean, I might as well, because I know I'm gonna receive comments from people saying, Seth has already admitted to all of this, so why the fuck are you making this video? Well, here's the thing, is that I am aware that Seth did admit during the stream with Keemstar that he did ask for nude pictures of Satire. He did say that it was a joke, but he did in fact admit that that is something that happened. But here's the thing, is that what Seth was admitting to are not the same screenshots that we were discussing earlier. They're actually in reference to a completely different set of screenshots, which I will mention later on in the video. But I just thought I would mention this because I'm seeing a lot of people confused as to what exactly Seth was confessing to. So yeah, that's about it. But that's actually not even the worst thing about this call. Now, one of the reasons for why I initially didn't want to make this, because I made a post, like I made a YouTube post about this drama, and I made it very clear that I wasn't going to make a video about this. And the reason for why I initially didn't want to make it is because I and a lot of other people have certain information about the people targeting Seth that does not point them in a very positive light. Not just in how ethical they are, but also in how legal some of the things they might have potentially done in the past, including towards Seth.
Yeah.
And I tried relaying it to this kid, but he kept swearing he had all sorts of evidence and shit. And after a certain point, you know, he's not giving evidence. And by the way, I don't know if you know about this kid. Jester might have told you. But apparently he like swatted some fucking kid because some kid joked that he wasn't that good of a hacker or something. So he got him swatted and apparently got his dad in prison or some crazy shit.
What the fuck?
And it makes yeah, ask Jester more about that. He'll know more about it because I don't really know that much about the situation. But Tryharder said that was basically the situation, but like it was just dumb or really complicated or something along those lines. And it gets weirder because you got to keep in mind The only reason I didn't try and expose you sooner was because when I asked, and this is something that came up like 3 years ago. I asked Abraham, hey, why don't we just like collaboratively put this out there into the public domain if you guys have so much evidence of Seth being a pedophile? This is something I've been asking about for years. And again, suddenly he doesn't want to work with me because apparently I'm a bad person and I do too much fucked up shit. But now he's hanging around some kid who swats people and stuff. That seems really bizarre to me. Suddenly they have screenshots and shit. Seems super bizarre to me. So I basically said, look, if any of this shit you guys can provide is confirmable beyond just random screenshots, like, i.e., since he's apparently like a fucking god-tier hacker, if he can get into your account or something, and then just showcase you fucking talking to a kid or something, which, I mean, like, you know, if you can get into people's accounts so easily, why not just do something like that, right? Like, if he can get into your account, why doesn't he literally just do that?
Yeah.
Why can't he show you talking to a kid or something? Like, on
crazy
video,
shit.
like, stream or... Yeah. Like, that's what I'm wondering.
So,
Because we have to rely on blurry-ass, old, pixelated screenshots of, like, shit.
and then
It's just silly. So I just want no real part of it.
Now, in case you're wondering the validity of the swatting claim, I'm just going to say up front that I'm not familiar with the story that Trini told. I don't know anything about it, so don't ask me if I think it's true or not. But I will say that there is actually a recording of swatting happening. Now, I'm going to have to censor parts of the recording because they do reveal someone's real life address.
Hello?
Call police department. How may I direct your call?
Hello? I can't deal with this anymore. My dad just shot my little sister. There's...
Nigga, did they actually just...
Shut... Huh.
St. Cloud Police Department.
Hello?
How can I help you?
Hello? My...
Hello?
Hello? My dad just shot my little sister. There's...
What's the address of your emergency? What's for verification? Are you saying spell it? I'm not...
Cool.
Spirited. Okay. You're doing a great job. What's the phone number that you're calling from in case we get disconnected? Sir, 8 not coming up. What is the numerical again? What is your numerical?
Okay, please. Listen to me, please. Right?
This is
Yeah.
you said we have a what's the numeric?
The numeric is...
Yeah.
Now, as bad as this recording is in and of itself, what makes it even worse is also some of the threats that were supposedly made towards Seth himself, which has made him hesitant to confront these people over the years, according to him.
I don't know if they're going to change it. I don't really give a fuck. These people are fucking dog shit and they're immoral. They're literally hanging out with a dude who is swatting people online, and that's like their go-to guy to like try to fucking bully me out of the community. They're trying to bully me out of the community by calling me a pedophile with these bullshit fucking screenshots and these stupid fucking chats that I have no fucking context to. They're dropping, manipulating, doing all this dumb shit, and they're like, oh, Seth, why won't you defend yourself? As they have a dude trying to fucking log my fucking account and spy on all my friends and call a fucking SWAT team and shit on me. What the fuck is that shit, dude? What is that? I'm the villain? I'm not allowed to defend myself with your stupid fucking bodyguard team of these fucking weird freaks? Like, and I'm the fucking weirdo? Like, fuck you, dude. I've been consistent for so fucking long. I've been publicly a degenerate. I'm like, hey, nice dick, bro. Wow, let's fuck that 4-year-old child up. Get people to debate me. Let's play devil's advocate on why fucking murdering a cow or something, or like fucking a sheep or some shit. Y'all are cucks. Eat shit and die. All this shit. I've been so fucking consistent with my fucking degenerate attitude. But is there anything to justify me actually being a fucking pedophile? No. It's them taking my degenerate fucking personality that I used to have out of context to try to slander me, and then use these fucking swatters as like a fucking deterrent to keep me away from saying anything so they can kick me out of the fucking community.
Also, in case you're wondering if Seth is lying about the threats of swatting, I'm going to play a recording that caused Seth to panic to the point where he had to consult the police in order to put his name on a no SWAT list. And I will let you guys reach your own conclusion.
Oh my god. Wait, Seth thinks he can't be fucking doxxed if he's in a public server?
Yeah, he's retarded.
Hold up. Let's test
He might as well just give up his address, bro. And he might as well give up his birth. He better have just drop his birth.
That nigga said let's test.
Who did what? Who did what? Confused. So true.
Now I want to test that. Hold on. When he makes his public server environment.
I think that was Timius that said that shit.
Wait, what?
Niggas are unironically just trying to find you. The chat is so cancer.
I'm waiting for this. I think I asked Arrow about it, and Arrow was like, "I'm not interested in this." How would you take exact message? I asked him, "Sir, what do you think about all this?" He said, "He said, y'all look into me. It's stupid as fuck, and I'm not interested in being involved in this dog shit."
Also, this was before Seth's Twitter account got deleted, but apparently someone tried to enter his and potentially Clyde's bank account following Keemstar's stream, and I know for a fact that one of the people accused of being a hacker/doxer was actually on that stream. I'm not sure if it was him that was responsible, it could have been someone else. Once again, I will let you guys reach your own conclusion. Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering, what exactly is my goal with all of this? Well, before I answer that, I would like to just say one thing. As far as my own personal opinion, solely based on the information we have so far, I think if there's one thing I can definitely agree on is that Seth is guilty of making very inappropriate comments. I think even if we were to disregard the element of the victim being underage, which I know some people have made the argument that it's a 3-year difference, that she wouldn't be considered underage in her country, which funnily enough, it was actually Clyde that made that argument.
The funny thing is the country she lives in, which is mine, it like even if that were to be true, it actually wouldn't be illegal, which makes it even funnier. At this stage, it's a matter of like they're trying to like really inflate this to make you look like, you know, worse than you are, and again with false information too, you know, be it that. So yeah.
But I will ignore that. And apparently, according to some sources, it's possible that Satire's age at the time was ambiguous, which I'm not sure if I 100% believe in that, to be honest, especially based on some of the screenshots I saw later. I do believe Seth knew her age, or at the very least, at some point he did learn what her age was. But even if we were to completely ignore that, I do still believe these comments were inappropriate. Later on, there are mentions of Seth asking her brother for nude pictures of her, and there are actually even more screenshots of stuff like this happening that weren't included in the Google Doc. I don't think I have the screenshots myself, but trust me when I say they do exist.
There's a screenshot of me going over, what was it? I said, nudes, ? And I'll put it in evidence. This is how I typed it. Nudes? Just like that. That emoji and everything. And that's what made Trini start his campaign against me.
And the thing is, Seth has explained that those messages are taken out of context and that he wasn't actually asking for nudes. He was just deliberately trolling one of the users in the server that apparently had a crush on her or something like that.
Now, the context is that Nate kind of had a crush on her. So I sent him a screenshot of me saying nudes, like, oh, Nate, I'm hitting on your girl, haha, to make fun of Nate.
And one of the things that makes me believe this might be the case is that, for one, he asked her brother, which I don't think any rational person would realistically expect an older brother to reveal his sister's nude pictures. That's just way too absurd to be believable. The other thing that makes me believe that he was joking is the fact that at one point he mentioned actually having pictures of her naked, and we all know that's blatantly not true because both Seth and the people accusing him, as in Satire and the writers of the doc, everyone has confirmed that he never at any point had possession of her pictures, which gives even more credence to the idea that all of this was just a sick joke. But just solely based on what I just mentioned, I think we can all agree that's pretty fucked up, even if they are just jokes. These are not interactions that I think any influencer should have with their fans. And here's the thing, this is me speaking as someone that actually does relate to Seth because I actually have a very similar sense of humor. Not so much in the exact same jokes he makes, but more so in the level of crudeness. Amongst my friends and family, I make a lot of really fucked up jokes. Like, one very consistent joke I make is acting like I simp for certain authoritarian dictators, not one in specific, literally all of them. I've joked about pretty much every fascist dictator out there, and I feel comfortable doing that amongst my friends and family because I'm close enough to them that they understand that I'm not being serious, I'm just joking, and I know what type of reaction I will get from them. They'll just tell me to shut the fuck up and call me a weirdo, which is exactly what the reaction I was hoping for. However, you will never see me making these types of jokes online, and especially amongst my fans. Sure, I feel pretty confident that the majority of my fans will probably understand what I'm going for, maybe they'll even appreciate my sense of humor. But I know there's always going to be a small minority of people who will not react as positively. I may end up having a pretty negative interaction with my fan that might cause me to hurt them in some way or another, or I might end up influencing them into believing fucked up ideas unironically when that was never my intention. Because of that, I do hold back a lot of my personality, not just on the internet, even in real life. I do hold back a lot when I talk to people. I think this was a lesson that Seth should have learned earlier on in his career, and unfortunately, because he left out so much of his degenerate personality to his community, it did negatively affect people. Regardless of whether or not you think Satire was groomed or not, I think we can all unanimously agree that Seth did legitimately hurt this individual, and it's too late to repair that. The damage is done, and I hope that this can serve as a lesson to both him and other content creators such as myself to never do this type of shit again. However, with all of that said, I don't think he's a pedophile. The evidence is way too vague and suspicious for me to make that conclusion. Once again, if there's more, like if there's some secret evidence that hasn't been made public, I have no problems looking into them. I'm not taking any definitive stances, but from what I've seen so far, I don't think anything I've seen makes me conclude without a shadow of a doubt that Seth is guilty of being a groomer or a pedophile. I think the most that you can concretely say is that he's a fucked up edgelord, but I don't think he's a danger to children. I don't see him as someone that should be put on a watch list. I think he just needs to get therapy, especially because for as long as I've known him, he's always been dealing with depression. I don't remember exactly which video this was from, and it's long been deleted, so I have no way of referencing it anymore. But I do recall one time when he was, I think, having a debate with someone on veganism, and he was asked if he felt any pragmatic obligation to consume vegan meals due to the fact that they're generally healthier and will increase your lifespan. And he responded by saying that due to his thoughts of depression at the time, he wouldn't mind if he lived up until he was 25. This was back in 2018. I think the best thing for him to do right now is maybe not so much walk away from the internet forever, but definitely take therapeutic sessions with a professional, potentially also take medication depending on how serious his suicidal thoughts are, and while he works on all of this, also learn how to better interact with his fans. As for the people targeting him, look, I'm gonna do my best to be charitable and say this. You should definitely revisit the doc. I know you guys update this every once in a while. Look into it, revise certain statements, give more context, offer more clarification, and if possible, show more screenshots, because I'm gonna be completely honest, this looks very fishy. I don't like dismissing someone without giving them a chance. I always want to allow everyone to have their opportunity to defend their case, but I cannot stress how much you need to clear up a lot of this, because everything I've shown so far with the recordings, and there's actually, like, there are more recordings that I decided not to share, And the only reason why I chose not to include it in the video is because it involves some other people that are part of another set of dramas that I honestly just don't want to get into. Like, that's all it. Like, I just don't want to deal with stress of other dramas, but I do have them, and they're not that hard to find. They're out there on the internet. And if these recordings that I'm referring to right now are real, which, you know, I'm gonna try to be charitable and give you the opportunity to present your case, but if they're real, it gives me even more reason to believe that all of this is just a defamation campaign. I'm not gonna go there yet, but you guys heard the recordings in this video. Literal swatting attempt.
Like, look at the evidence, chat. I posted the proof in chat. All those people saying, oh, Seth is just acting. I posted a literal clip of them planning on swatting me.
Seth thinks he can't be fucking doxxed if he's using a public server.
I can't, dude. Where's the act? Where's the fucking act?
Hold up. Let's test
You might as well just give up his address, bro. Anybody as well give up his birthday. You better have just drop his birthday.
That nigga said let's test it.
Who did what?
Look in evidence. I have a clip someone sent me of them threatening to swat me.
Now I want to test that. Hold on. When he makes his public server environment.
That's not a fucking act. I'm a human being. A fucking MP5 will kill me. I'm not immune to the MP5. The flashbang will fuck my eardrums up.
And to answer your question of what exactly is the point of this video, that's exactly what I want. My goal is to just simply encourage more people to look into this, because trust me when I say this, there's a lot more to the story. Lots of grudges, cold wars, bad blood, and reading one clearly biased Google Doc written by one side of the coin is not enough to get the full picture. Other than that, I think that's all I have to share. For the love of fucking God, let's not use Keemstar as a fucking standard for discussing pedophilia allegations. These are very serious topics, and I really hope people learn from this video. Take care.